Israel, a nation robbed of its history. As Israel struggles to maintain its right to exist as a nation in the Holy Land, many fail to recognize that Israel was robbed of its precious history decades ago. The time has come to give the Jewish people their history back.
In recent decades, ruthless attacks have been brought against the rich Jewish heritage, which tells of being delivered from Egypt, led by God through the wilderness, and eventually brought into the land which God had promised to Abraham hundreds of years before.
The consensus of mainstream scholars and historians now says that Jewish history is anything but historical. Israeli archaeologist Zeev Herzog states that the Exodus is, quote, a history that never even happened. Most scholars agree that Israel's ancient history was invented, contrived, dramatized, or even completely fabricated in a desperate attempt of the Jews to create their own history.
This is a harsh blow to Jewish faith and identity, which is necessarily inextricable from their ancient past. Rabbi Irving Greenberg demonstrates traditional Jewish sentiment when he states that the Exodus is, quote, arguably the most important event of all time, unquote, because of how it shaped so much of subsequent history throughout the world. He goes on to say, quote, that it was a Jewish event is an eloquent tribute to the extraordinary role the Jewish people, so minute a fragment of the human race, have played in human history, unquote.
Rabbi Greenberg's choice of the word event stands in stark contrast to the mainstream consensus today. Sacred Jewish traditions such as Seder and Passover, laden with meaning and practiced for millennia, are now viewed as being founded on small-scale random happenings at best and pure mythology at worst. Quote, we can say now with considerable confidence that the Bible is not a history of anyone's past, states biblical scholar and theologian Thomas Thompson.
This loss of Jewish history has negatively impacted Judaism, Christianity, and even Western civilization as a whole. The Judeo-Christian ethic, based upon God's law spoken to Moses at Sinai, now seems to be standing on thin air. John Van Seters, scholar of the Hebrew Bible and ancient Near East, says, quote, the quest for a historical Moses is a futile exercise. He now belongs only to legend, unquote. Does the Judeo-Christian ethic, undergirding our very civilization, have any factual basis at all?
For many, this trouble with Israelite history is really old news. The purpose of this video is not to rehash old news, but instead to present some new information. This information restores to the nation of Israel a precious piece of their unique and sacred history, meanwhile dropping a bomb on the mainstream scholarly consensus about the Exodus narrative, so to speak. For the remainder of this video, we will focus on a new scientific theory that has emerged from the work of an independent research scientist, a theory which explains in detail a curious part of Israel's ancient story, manna in the wilderness.
When the people of Israel saw it, they said to one another, what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, it is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. Exodus 16:15. Manna, the white, flaky substance recorded in the biblical books of Exodus and Numbers as appearing on the ground every morning and sustaining millions of lives through the wilderness, can now be thoroughly explained.
A book, Bread from Heaven, The Manna Mystery Solved, published by independent research scientist Dr. Gerald Aardsma, demonstrates that the biblical account of manna can be nothing but simply historical. As readers of the book will quickly learn, manna is a naturally occurring phenomenon that happens when there are millions of people, along with multiple millions of livestock, in an orderly encampment on top of desert soil.
The biblical record of manna provides a set of data about the properties of manna, which were observed and recorded by the ancient Israelites. It records, for example, that manna spoiled in ambient air, didn't spoil when kept sealed up, melted in desert heat, was white, was a fine, flake-like substance, and tasted both like wafers with honey and cakes baked with oil. Furthermore, the biblical text tells us that manna spoiled on weeknights, but not on Sabbath nights. Perhaps this is the most mysterious part of the biblical account.
Using this remarkable ancient data set, Dr. Aardsma, who is the biblical chronologist, has become the first person to ever answer the ancient question, what is it? Some have previously purported that manna was a substance secreted by insects or was a sap from desert trees, but no theory about manna has ever been able to explain or match the full set of biblical data points. Instead, previous explanations about manna have lent considerable weight to the idea that the narrative in the Exodus is mytho-historical.
However, after a year of study and research in pursuit of the manna mystery, Dr. Aardsma's latest book presents not only what manna was, but also how it was produced, why it was absent on the Sabbath, how it sustained millions of lives in the wilderness, and much more. His theory brings to us a substance that can actually be produced in the laboratory, held in our hands, touched, and tasted. This substance matches all the properties of manna described in the biblical text.
This small but weighty piece of Israeli history can no longer be placed in the realm of mythology. Fabricated stories do not bear out in the real world the way the manna is now shown to do. The only way to get manna in the wilderness is if there is a vast multitude of people accompanied by vast herds of livestock out in the desert, just as the Bible describes. If the circumstances of the Israelite encampments could be recreated today, there would be manna on the ground in the mornings. This discovery points strongly to an Exodus narrative that is simply historical.